Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Team Challenge, Team Choice Elements, and Instant Challenge training. I see that I have Philippa and Harsh online with me. If you guys are here and you can hear me, can you go ahead and type something in the chat box? Excellent. Yay. Harsh, where are you joining us from? From Texas. Awesome. And we're not hearing from Philippa. Oh, and Joanna is online as well. Joanna, Philippa, if you're online, if you could send me something on the text box just so that I know that you can hear me properly. Hi, Joanna. Good. Welcome. So we're supposed to have about 6 people on, but I am going to start on time, and hopefully we won't run into any technical issues like last week. And I do apologize again for whatever happened. I'm not certain what happened, but I did some more testing, and I'm very glad you were all able to get into the webinar the right way this time. So just some housekeeping before we begin. I'm going to share my screen much larger, so don't worry, you'll be able to see the actual PowerPoint magnified. At the same time, please know that I can't actually hear you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat box. There's also a button down at the bottom that says questions. So if there are any deep questions that you're having as we're going through the content, feel free to put them there. I will most likely at the end of going through all the slides, I will go back and look at the questions, and we'll make sure that all of those are answered before you leave today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to make this big for you. Okay, so we're going to start today. We're going to go a little bit through the philosophy of DI and then how to apply that philosophy in what is the team challenge, the instant challenge, and the team choice elements. Okay, so for this first slide, I just wanted to really quickly talk about what it is we're trying to do with the DI experience. And as you can see here, it's talking about informal learning, and you can see by the cartoon kind of what's happening, right? He's sitting at a desk, he's being forced to learn in a sort of like a little boxed in area. The teacher's probably telling him what to write down and sometimes what to think and how to feel about things. So the idea behind DI is to allow the children to break out of that particular mold, which, maybe is necessary for some types of learning, but in order to be able to develop the skills that are needed for innovative and creative thinking, we need to provide informal learning experiences, which happen all around us every day. Every time you're at work and you realize, I need to get something done, I don't actually know how to do it, so I'm going to look it up on the internet, or I'm going to take a course, or I'm going to just look at it and hope that the answer jumps out at me. All of these things are informal learning, and it is the way that we are actually hardwired to learn. It allows the students to have a little more control over what it is they're interested in and what their intake will be in the end. Okay, so what we want to do, and as I'm going through the presentation today, I'm going to sort of point out different places where informal learning can occur. And I hope you were all able to watch the team manager training on the roles. I'll reference those a little bit so that we can really focus today on the challenge expert role, which is what we're going to be delving into today. Okay. So I love this quote, so I just wanted to share it with you very quickly. Johnny Wells is our director of education for DI International, and he said a couple of years back in a board of trustees meeting that the last place winner should gain the same amount of knowledge and skills as the first place winner in any destination imagination program. This, for me, reminds us that DI is an experience, and it's about the process. It is not about winning a medal. It's not about going to a tournament. It's about all of the learning and the love of learning, hopefully, that will take place during the 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks that you're working with a team. So however long you're working with them, the more experiences we allow them to have and the more challenges we allow them to face, the more they're going to walk away thinking that this was an amazing experience. Okay, so that's something for me, one of the reasons why I continue to do DI. So we're going to get right into Team Challenge, which is our informal learning component number 1. Now, I hope all of you have already accessed the challenges. If you have not, there is a how-to DI video on the www.diuk.org website that will show you how to access the resource area. That's where you'll be able to download your challenge. Okay, and if not, I'm going to walk you through one of the challenges so you can see how it's set up today. So as you know, the Team Challenge, we have 7 of them. 6 of them are competitive, which are our technical, scientific, engineering, fine arts, improv, and project outreach. And then we have the yellow one there that you can see, Rising Stars, which is our non-competitive early learning component. So every year these challenges change, but they're always within the same categories. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through what the challenge looks like and what the components of them are. And then we're going to talk about a little bit how you actually provide the learning experience behind it. So I've chosen the engineering challenge, but they're all set up in the same format. Okay. The engineering challenge, you can see you have the front cover. On the front cover, you'll be able to see the logo for this year. You'll be able to see the obviously the sponsor, and you'll be able to see a really quick excerpt about what the engineering challenge is. When you open the front cover, you're going to see the copyright laws. So this is important just to note. Every team number allows you to make 10 copies of the challenge. So it doesn't mean that you can use that challenge for 10 teams. It means that a team can normally have from 2 to 7 students, but you also have team managers and assistant team managers. So the copyright allows you, by buying 1 team number, you can then make 10 copies of that challenge to use with that same team. So that 1 team that belongs to that team number. Okay, so if you have 3 or 4 teams that are going to participate in the program, you would buy 3 or 4 team numbers depending, and then for each team number you buy, you can make up to 10 copies to use with that particular team. Okay. Now we have the next page will take you to the contents and the intro into the program. So the contents, I'm going to go through them one by one, but there you have sort of like a quick reference guide so you can get to the page you need. And then the introduction just talks a little bit about what the background of DI is. This is something that you can definitely share with the kids because it gives them a sense of being part of something bigger. Which is a wonderful feeling. And then it continues the rest of the contents on that second page. Now, once we get into the next few pages, we're starting to enter into what's the challenge asking of my team. So you'll see on this particular spread in each challenge, the different, let's say, large bullet point areas that the students will be focusing on. And then inside the challenge itself, you'll have a very, very, very clear, detailed description of each one of these broken down. So in the engineering challenge specifically, it's talking about what they have to do, design, build, and test. And then it talks about the materials that they're allowed to use, the structure weight and how that is scored. And then the international issue, which is going to be the play or the script that they're going to create and the play that they're going to perform at the same time that they are testing their structure at the tournament. Okay. On the next page, this is where we have some checklist items for you as the team manager, but also I would encourage you to allow the students to have access to this and to really understand what it is that they're getting into and have control over ticking off the boxes as they get things done. So on the left-hand side, the In It Together points of interest, every challenge will have that, your points of interest that you'll be able to go through. And then it tells you about the team budget and the time limit. Now, the team budget, I'm going to go into a little bit later, but you will be able to see the amount of money in US dollars. So we're talking about an equivalency, obviously. Okay, so whatever country you're in, you're going to take that number and you're going to use the currency exchange rate, and that'll be the amount of currency in your country that can be used to potentially solve the challenge. And I want to highlight that that money is only the materials that they will present on the stage at the tournament. No matter where the tournament is. If you have a tournament in your school that's very informal, that's the idea. If it goes to a larger tournament, like an affiliate competitive tournament, same idea. The money that they use for all the materials, including props, costumes, paint, materials to make their structure, materials to build this amazing backdrop that they might have, all of those materials, the pricing needs to be included on an expense form, which I will explain further ahead. And any other money that they use to build things before the tournament, things that were tests, like they made a prop, a small prop, they used materials for it, they decide that that prop isn't what they wanted, so they started over. It's only the materials that they used for the actual presentation that need to count towards their team budget limit. Now, the time limit is also very, very important. The time limit includes both the bringing on of the materials onto the stage and the setting up. So most of the challenges are 8 minutes long. Those 8 minutes include their setup times. So they will be brought into the room. There will be a space that will be marked as the stage. They will be off stage with all of their props, and they will be introduced. The head appraiser will come over and speak to them, make them feel comfortable, explain what's going to happen. And then after they address the audience, they address the appraisers, they're going to tell the team that it is time to begin. And at that moment, when they click the timer, that's when the team will come on the stage, set up, and do their presentation. And they'll have 8 minutes to do that. Okay. And then down below, you can see some of the learning outcomes, which is always very helpful when you have to somehow pull this together with your curriculum. And then on the next page, you can see what the teams have access to and really what we really encourage them to read. So they should know their team challenge. They should have read the at the tournament, the reward points, the rules of the road, which is the basically the rules and guidelines that help safety procedures, things that will happen at the tournament to make sure that everyone is safe. Okay, and you also need to know the published clarifications. Now, all of these things I'm going to go through during the workshop right now. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is your essential challenge. You'll be able to see that, and that can be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages long, depending on your challenge. It has all of the areas that were indicated in the first few pages, but sort of put out in a more detailed manner. It requires a lot of reading. It requires the children to read it and discuss it, definitely. So this part of the challenge is the part that I would highly recommend that you as a team manager read various times before you even talk to the kids about it, and then have the students read it. If they're older students, let them take it home and read it and then come back and have a discussion about it. If they're younger students, break it down into pieces, talk about it little by little, explain it more than having them maybe decide what it means. But again, it just depends on their age. Remember that no matter how young the student is, they can always surprise us. So it's better to try and let them figure it out and then add in your comments as you see necessary to make sure that they understand completely what the challenge is asking. The next pages that you'll see are your team choice elements, and the team choice elements are the same for every challenge. The only challenge that doesn't include team choice elements is improvisation, and there are a certain amount of points that are given just for that. We'll discuss all this a little bit ahead. And then you'll see the reward points. The reward points for me are one of the most important parts of DI because it is the way that the students will be able to learn a little bit more about project management. They understand what they're moving towards, what are they being scored on, and all of these reward points are explained back in the challenge. So all of it sort of ties together. And this reward point page, we want the kids to write on it and make notes and say, okay, we've got this. I think we need to go back and look at this particular part because we're not quite there yet. So we want them to really use this booklet to record what they're thinking, what they're feeling, their ideas, as a little bit of a documentation of their process. The last thing that you'll see in your tournament data form is, in your challenge booklet is your tournament data form. And there's 3 pages to the tournament data form. The first page has a checklist so that you know how many copies of each of the pages you need to bring. And it's very, very clear for you. It says page 1 needs this many copies, page 2, this many copies, page 3, this many copies. So it's just a matter of having the students fill in one set and then making copies as indicated to bring to the showcase tournament. And the reason why you do that is because these copies go to the appraisers. So the appraisers get a chance to actually really appreciate what the students did. So they get to read through all of the ideas that the students have written down in their tournament data form before they perform. That way the appraisers have an idea of what they're going to see and what to look for. And the kids get a chance to say through the tournament data form what they would like the appraisers to focus on. So it's really a great way for them to have that first contact with the appraisers. And that's why we need multiple copies. So the second form on this tournament data form, the second page, again, we have another checklist because this particular challenge is engineering. So the second page for each tournament, for each challenge will be different. The tournament data form will have items specific to that challenge. And then your third page is the same for all challenges. It is the creative process form where the kids get to give us a little bit of feedback as to what their creative process was like. How did they feel during the recognize stage when they were getting to know the challenge and getting to know each other? And then when they were starting to imagine, did they find any really cool materials that they'd never been exposed to before? How many ideas did they come up with? All of these things they can put here and really give us a lot of feedback of understanding how well they absorb the process of DI. Okay. So that is basically the content of the team challenge. Now, I'm going to walk into a little bit now the skills that the kids will be, or that the students will be developing as they go through their team challenge. The first one is goal setting. The team challenge, as I mentioned, with the reward points, that page with the reward points gives the students line by line all of the things that we would expect them to be working towards to solve their solution and the amount of points that they could potentially earn by focusing on them. Okay, so by knowing what their final goal is, then they can break it down into smaller pieces and tasks, and hopefully eventually talk a little bit about roles that can be used to reach those goals, so that the whole team isn't working together towards one final goal, but they've broken it down into pieces based on talents and interests and collaborative skills, and then they can meet those goals together as a team, but in potentially individual little groupings of 2 or 3. Sometimes students even prefer to do things individually if they feel like they are pressed for time. The second thing that the challenge itself is focusing on is measuring and understanding success through criteria. And once again, I'm going back to the success criteria. This is a very important page for the students. By them knowing what's expected, then they have already a place where they can reflect after every single meeting. They can go back and say, how close are we to this? Are we moving towards this? Did we do anything towards point A during this meeting or not? And if we didn't, what should we be doing? Or is it not something that we need to worry about because it's not in our timeline until 2 weeks from now? So the success criteria really, really can help in time management and goal management, as long as the students have a copy of it and they have you there to sort of guide them and ask those questions to get them to reflect on their process as they're going through the challenge. The next area is developing curiosity and research skills. So as you know, the creative process starts with recognize. As they're going through the recognize stage, they're getting to know themselves, and hopefully it's a safe environment that you've created for them where they feel like they can share and they can allow their curiosity for topics that may not be well, let's say, appreciated by other children, but in this safe space, in this DI space, they can voice all of their interests and their feelings and what they really want to learn about, and the talents that they might want to expose during their solution. Okay, so if in the first stage that's happened, then you're going to see a very natural curiosity start to blossom in the students. And then even in the imagine stage, you're going to start seeing them, or hopefully they will take the initiative, or you might have to suggest to them to branch out and learn new research skills and not always rely on Wikipedia and not always rely on just the internet, but actually going and talking to people, thinking, who is an expert on this? Who tweets about this that I might be able to try and get in contact with? Who on Facebook runs an organization that deals with this particular topic, and then I might be able to ask them some questions. Have them branch out and see how they can really find people, and my brain has gone dry. I apologize. We want them to find different sources that are reliable and able to move them ahead in their solution. And then the last one is thinking around the box. But as I put in the picture, it's actually thinking without the box. This is what we want. We want them to get rid of the boxes that people want to put around everything, because innovation is about thinking without a box. It's about seeing all the things that are around you, examining every possibility, enjoying the examination of those possibilities. And so one of the things that I've written here is, instead of them reading through the challenge and saying, what does this mean? Try to have them rephrase it to say, what could it mean? What could this mean? This line that I'm reading, I don't quite understand it, but what could it mean? Because DI is written specifically in a language that allows them to interpret, as opposed to just saying, oh yeah, this is the way it has to be done. It allows them to say, oh, the way they've written that, there's like a million ways that this could be done. What's the way that we're going to choose? Which brings me to DI language a little bit. So as you're reading through the challenges, if you've already read through it, I'm sure you've noticed that there's certain words that tend to be used. And there's a couple here on the screen, such as original, make it or part of it, at some point, design and create. And obviously, vocabulary is a big deal with DI, because a lot of times we'll be using technical terms that the kids will need to research, they will need to look up and make sure that they understand what is being asked of them. So it's important for them, when they're looking at the language, to just sort of step back and say, ooh, make it or part of it. If it says that, then that doesn't mean that you're going to get that it's wrong to make all of something. Let's say that the thing said make it or part of it, move from one side of the room, or let's say just move. Let's leave it at that. Make it or part of it move, using engineering. Let's say that. So what we want them to understand is they can either make the whole item move, or they can make a part of the item move. And it doesn't mean that one of them is better than the other, because there is no value here. It's not saying that, oh, but if you make all of it move, then you'll probably do better, or you'll probably learn more. Absolutely not. Every team is going to have a different way to tackle the problem. And what we want them to understand is that if it says that you can do this or that, let them explore what works best for their talents, what works best for their way of thinking. Okay? So allow them to really, really explore the language and embrace it. Now, I went through this in the last challenge training, but I would like to go through it again, because it is helpful. Okay, so I'm just realizing that if I make this bigger, you guys can see it even bigger. So I'm just going to do this. There we go. So how do you read the challenge? The first thing that's going to happen is when you're working with a team, you want to make sure that you have your copies, 1 copy per student. So they all have their copies that they can take home, they can write in, they can highlight, they can reflect everything so that they have that recorded document for themselves, okay? And the first time you read through it, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to read through it alone, you know, let them go off, figure it out if they're old enough. If they're younger, you can do it with them, whatever works best for your age level, okay? When it is time for them to get a deep understanding of the challenge, you want to try and have a set of crayons, markers, or highlighters. It doesn't make any difference, okay? Whatever you have available is fine. And you want to have 1 yellow, 1 pink, 1 blue, and 1 green per student. So they have their challenge, they have their crayons, pens, markers in front of them. And as you read through section by section, you're going to get the kids to play a game. It's you know, like a Where's Waldo type thing where you need to find the words must, will, points, and may. Now, you can do it however works best for you, depending on the age level that you're dealing with. You might want to do all the musts first, and then all the wills, then all the points, then all the may. But if you do that, you're kind of breaking the challenge apart. So my suggestion would be by section in the challenge, you go through one section, you read it through, you have the kids find the questions. You can have it as a contest. Like who can find, okay, you two have to find the musts, you two find the wills, you two find the points, and the last child has to find the word may. And they have to look through it, and as soon as they have their answer, they have to raise their hand, and then they all share as a team. Okay, so there's ways to make it interactive and fun. So it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, we have to read through the challenge now, okay? Make it fun, make it interactive. Now, after you finish going through, you want to then go back and find the negatives. Okay, so you're going to, I would say on a second day, all right, because a lot of times you might be overwhelmed or the team might be overwhelmed. Okay, so break it up into small pieces. And the next day, another meeting that you have, you give them each a pen or a pencil this time. And you walk through again, section by section, and you say, all right, now we have to circle all of the must nots, no's, won'ts, will not, may not, anything that has a negative, okay? And you as a team manager can guide that discussion on what is a negative, because they might find other things, other words that they think might also mean a negative, and they can decide whether that should be circled or not. Okay, so after you've done all of this, you will have a lovely, colorful challenge that's nice to, interesting to look at, and you're going to walk through the 2 following indications. So the yellow and pink sentences contain rules that the team must follow to solve the challenge. Yellow and pink, things that they must follow. The blue and the green sentences are the areas where the team gets to have a little more decision making about what or how they're going to do the required element. So we have things that are, you have to do this. Again, the how they do it is a little bit open for them. And then there's ones where they can decide, like they might decide to do it, they might not decide to do it. That's fine. Okay, so this is how I would recommend for you to read the challenge to help the kids understand what they're working towards. And of course, this would be a great way to introduce them to project management, because once they see the reward points and then they understand what is required of them, they can then create a timeline of and also assign duties of who's going to do what. So documenting value. The next part of the team challenge, as I mentioned, we have a budget, but the documenting value is much, much more than that. So there are 3 resources that the team has at their disposal. One of them is money. Now, when I say money, I mean the budget limit that is written in your challenge. That does not mean that the team has to use that money. Okay, this is very, very important to remember. The use of money has nothing to do with scoring, but the combination of values, that makes all the difference in the world. So we have money, we have, I'm going to just bring this up really quick, talent, and we have time. These are the 3 values that the team is going to be working on. And as a team manager, we want to help them develop the skills of understanding and using value. Okay, so they have these 3 resources. They have money that they could spend if they wanted to. They have talents. Each of them has their own talents. Plus, as a team, they're going to have a collective talents. And then, of course, they have time. And you will be able to decide how much time they have, because they'll be meeting with you probably once a week, but then allowing them to have time to work, maybe have a space in the school or wherever they're meeting where they could meet without the adult and continue to work on things, is a great way for them to have that autonomy to decide what's coming next in my challenge. Another way for them to have more time is to, they make the plan with you so that you feel that they're heading in the right direction, and then they decide to meet up on weekends. Now, again, that only works in certain cultures. So if that's not an option in your culture, that's absolutely fine. But I just want to make sure that you know the different possibilities so that the kids can explore how they can use their time. And again, these are just ideas from my point of view. If you let the team think about how they could get more time, they might come up with some amazing ideas. I've had teams decide to come to school 35 to 40 minutes early in the mornings and do planning and instant challenges at that time, so that when they actually meet during the week, they're only working on their main challenge. There's lots of, I've had teams decide to give up their lunch break 2 times a week to have extra time to work on the challenge. So there are ways that can potentially be explored depending on the culture that you live in and how you're running the program in your particular school. So going back to the money, the expense report that the students will fill in, you'll be able to find in the document Rules of the Road on pages 18 to 20. The expense report, that's funny that I put pages 18 to 20 because that can't be right. I apologize for that. It's the last page in the Rules of the Road. Okay. I remember the pages 18 to 20 give you a description of how to fill in the expense report. Okay. So the description is in Rules of the Road and the expense report is the last page in the Rules of the Road. So those 2 things will go together. Okay. And again, the students can feel free to fill this in their national currency, because they'll be showcasing in the place where they are living. If you are attending a tournament that is, outside, you may be asked to put the equivalent in the currency where you're going to be performing. But again, for purposes of the challenge, the way it's written, the currency can be in your local currency. Okay. The talent you'll be able to find in the roadmap on pages 26 through 28. Now, basically, this is a team choice element inventory. But in the end, when you look at it, if you've done a multiple intelligence survey, you'll see that that's specifically, it's very similar to a multiple intelligence survey. So by them taking this, each one taking this particular evaluation, they'll have a bit of a rounded understanding of what the team is bringing to the table. What do they like to do? What are they interested in? Maybe they don't know how to do it, but they would like to know how to do it. All of these things can be explored, especially during the recognized stage, but definitely as the team feels more comfortable and as they start researching and exploring, you probably will find that more talents come in. One of the things that I love is when students realize that they are very good at something, such as persuasion. I've had teams tell me, oh, you know what, Joseph on our team, he is so good at convincing people to do things. And so they realized that they didn't have a lot of money available to buy resources. So they figured, let's use Joseph to go and talk to some local suppliers that might be able to donate materials for the challenge. So this is a way where I was explaining to you before about using all your resources to understand value. That value is not always about money. It's about how you use the resources that you have to make the best impact, to become innovative. Okay. So by getting the kids to understand how they can use their talents to solve the problem and to balance out maybe a lack of time or a lack of money, are amazing life skills that they will be able to apply later on. The last one is time, and you'll be able to find the sheets that will help you with this in the roadmap pages 75 to 77. And this comes from the Project Management Institute. And they've helped us create this in a way that is a little bit less daunting than it could be for especially for young teams. So it helps them to understand what are the things that we're creating. In other words, what are the deliverables? And those deliverables can be found in the challenge on that spreadsheet that opens. I think it's page 3 and 4. Those are your deliverables, okay? And then your success measures, we already know where those are in our success criteria, and you've highlighted your whole book, so you've got everything nice and colored up. You know what you have to do. You know the things that you're allowed to have a little leeway on. And then from there, you're going to break it down. You're going to help the kids, obviously. We want the students to do this. But as a mentor, as a guide, we want you to help them understand how to sequence and how to schedule the breakdowns, the milestones, to get to these deliverables. And there's three pages, I believe. Yes, there's 3 pages to fill in for the project plan. And it also helps them understand roles and how the team can decide who's going to work on which milestone or which deliverable. And then how are we going to communicate back with each other to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all working towards the same success criteria. So the last part of the team challenges is the clarifications, which I mentioned earlier. It's very, very important, you as the team manager, who is the challenge expert, that you are current on clarifications. So what is a clarification? Sometimes when students or the team managers reading through the challenge itself, they realize that something in part A doesn't quite fit with something in part C, let's say. And they read it and they've discussed it, and they don't understand why it says one thing in one place and another thing in another place. So at that point in time, you've reviewed the challenge, you've read the rules of the road, you know what's allowed, what's not allowed, you've discussed it with the team has tried to understand these parts, they just can't quite wrap their minds around it. So you as the team manager would then go onto the www.destinationimagination.org website, and you're going to click on clarifications in the drop-down menu under challenge program. And you can see it here on the screen. So it says challenge program and drop-down menu, and it's highlighted in orange, clarifications. And when you click on clarifications, you'll see all of the challenges come up. So you would click on the challenge that your team is doing. And then inside that, when you come to that new page, you will be able to see all of the published clarifications. So any clarification question that any team has asked anywhere around the world that has modified the challenge in any way, shape, or form will be posted on that page. So that's a page that you can go back to every once in a while, have the team go back to, because they don't need a login to access this page. So you can teach the team how to get there, make sure that they're being responsible, checking the clarifications, because the clarification obviously could help them as well. And then if you have a clarification as your team, there's a link there that says to ask a clarification, click here. So you're going to click there, it's going to open up a form for you, and you're going to fill in the clarification question that the team has. And again, we want the team to be as involved as possible. So if the team is at an age where they can fill that clarification in, and you just oversee to make sure that the person receiving the clarification question will understand what they're asking, that is fabulous, because it really gives them that ownership over the process. Okay, so each team is allowed 10 clarifications. Some of them result in a change, but many of them do not. Many of them, you'll just receive an answer that explains why it is the way it is. Okay, so if there is a significant response, then that will be posted on the clarification page. Okay, and no clarifications are allowed after February 15th, because we're then starting tournaments, and we need to have a sort of a stop on any changes that might affect one team that presents later in the season. Like if they had more information than the team that presented early in the season, that doesn't allow for a level playing field. So that's it. But I want to make a little aside on the team choice elements. So the team choice elements are part of the team challenge. as you saw, there was a page that describes the team choice elements and what they're for, which I'm going to go through right now. I'm doing it as a separate informal learning component because it's something that frequently causes questions. So let's go through the team choice element. The team choice element is a component that allows the team to bring themselves into the challenge. So it allows them to shine. It allows them to bring their own talents, their own interests. It allows them to go above and beyond what's being asked in the challenge. So to give you sort of an idea of what this would look like in classroom terms, okay? You assign a project to everyone in your class. That project requires 5 items to be included in the project to get a score of 90%. Okay, so if it's on a score out of 100, they're allowed to get 90 points if they do all 5 of those components and they do it well. Okay, that last 10%, those last 10 points are earned completely separately if a student comes in and adds a brand new item into the project that they are solving. So, or creating, I should say. All right. So it's a completely separate component. It's not that they've taken one of the first 5 items and they've modified it or made it really cool. It's that they've actually sat down, said, okay, this is my project. I've included the 5 items, but oh, you know what? I really wish I could also add this in. So I'm going to add that in. And that extra exciting component earns another 10 points for them. So inside the actual DI learning experience and the challenge itself, the team choice elements are worth 60 points of the total 200 and there's 240 points plus the 60. I'm going to make sure that that's right because I don't want you to walk away with the wrong idea. So I'm just checking the challenge at the moment. So yes, the central challenge earns up to 240 points, but to get to the 300 points, they have to add in team choice elements, which are the other 60 points for a total of 300 points. So what's important when you're talking to the kids about the team choice element is after they've gone through the challenge, they've highlighted everything, they know what's required of them, they know what they could do or what they couldn't do. They need to come up with 2 more things that are not mentioned anywhere in any part of the challenge. Okay? Literally not mentioned. So if a challenge, we'll do a nice easy one. The engineering challenge requires a structure. So no part of the structure can be a team choice element because they're taking something that's already required. They might be making it better. They might be adding this or that, but it's not a completely new part. It's added in that makes this solution uniquely theirs. Now, let's say that a challenge requires a specific character, but nowhere in the challenge does it mention the character's costume. So maybe what they decide is, I want to use my sewing skills or my craft skills, and I want to create the most amazing costume for this character. So the character is a required element, but it did not mention anywhere in the challenge anything about a costume at all. So that costume could then be one of their team choice elements. Now, the team choice elements are appraised on 3 things: creativity and originality, quality, workmanship, or effort, and integration into the presentation. So this is another important thing to take into account and let the kids discuss, what does it mean to integrate something into the presentation? If they decide to do a song and dance that they tag on to the end of their presentation, and the song and dance has nothing to do with the actual solution itself, it's just more of a, okay, let's finish with a song and dance and have some fun, they will probably not have developed the skill of integration. So that's what we're looking for here is everything that we do, we want it to sort of mesh together. We want it to flow from one thing to another. Okay. It doesn't mean that we can't have standalone items, but it's a skill that really, really brings home the idea of innovation. How do we make sure that everything integrates properly? And you can see it in the software nowadays. There's so many software companies that are vying for the same customers, and they need to make sure that their platform is more and more integrated, because people don't want to go a different place for different things. Everything needs to be integrated. And so this is a very important component and a very important skill, I would say, for employability and for the future workforce. So that's the end for the team challenge side of things. So for the last 15 minutes, I'm just going to go through Instant Challenge, which is our third informal learning component. Now, I love Instant Challenge. You'll be able to find instant challenges all the way through the roadmap. They're there. You have an instant challenge, 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 instant challenges in every session inside the roadmap. And again, please remember that when you're doing the roadmap and you're doing each of these informal learning experiences with the students, don't feel like you have to do all of the experiences that are in the book. If you have, again, going back to your resources, if you don't have a lot of time, figuring out how can you maximize the talent that you have to balance out the amount of time that you have and get the most learning out of what you're doing. Okay, you can learn a lot from one instant challenge if it's done properly. You don't have to do 10 instant challenges to, I should say, if you do 10 instant challenges, but done, let's say, quickly or not really as in depth as they could be, then you'll probably get the same amount of learning by doing it that way as you could by doing it one time with a really great process set up. Okay, so what is the difference between instant challenge and the main challenge? The instant challenge focuses on a little bit more of a limited environment. So in the team challenge, you tend to have more access to materials, where in the instant challenge, you have very limited materials that you're allowed to work with. In the team challenge, you have lots of time. You have weeks to develop your solution, where with the instant challenge, you have a very, very limited amount of time, usually between 5 and 8 minutes. In the team challenge, you're working on long-term planning and critical thinking, where with the instant challenge, you are working on quick fire thinking. It is all about finding the idea and carrying it out. And it's a lot about collaboration, you can imagine, right? Because they're all going to want to put their ideas in. And by the time they finish brainstorming, the 8 minutes are up. So there's a lot of reflection in Instant Challenge on how to collaborate and how to really take on team roles, okay? And you can see right here on this particular screen, the idea is to develop a culture of appreciation, trust, and support, which I mentioned at the very beginning, creating a safe space where people are not insulting each other. If they do, immediately put a stop to it, discuss with them how it makes people feel to do those types of things, to say that somebody's idea was not positive. Anything that you hear, try and stop those behaviors immediately, because then the team will know that they can trust you, and eventually they will begin to trust each other. Okay. The types of instant challenges that we have are performance-based, task-based, and the combined IC, which is where you have performance and task mixed together. And you can see in the orange square some of the potential job roles that the students could experiment with. Task manager, performance manager, timekeeper, materials manager, score manager, and a flex team member. So the idea here with the job roles with Instant Challenge is to get them to try on different hats. The more they experiment with different roles, the more they're going to understand where their talents lie, and also what they are enjoying learning, not only about themselves, but about others, and being able to say, oh my gosh, I love the way you did this. And really, you as a team manager modeling how to compliment others is a fabulous skill that they will hopefully assimilate and then apply in the workforce, because more and more we are seeing the need for positive communication in the workplace. So how do we approach the Instant Challenge? There's basically 4 steps. And if you follow these steps, you will be an instant challenge guru. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is choose the instant challenge you're going to work on for that particular session. And I do recommend that you do one instant challenge per session, at least, because remember that at the tournament, they will present an instant challenge component. So you want them to practice. They definitely need a chance to practice the instant challenge component. Okay. And you'll see that as they practice the instant challenge, those skills of collaboration will be assimilated and applied towards their main challenge. So you're going to choose the challenge, you're going to read it through, and you're going to make copies. You don't have to have a copy per student for this. You can have a copy for every 2 students or every 3 students. It's just so that they can each read along with you. Okay. And then you're going to gather the materials that are indicated in the instant challenge. Most materials for the instant challenge are things that you can find fairly easily at your house or in a school type setting. Okay. The next thing you're going to do is the pre-explore stage. Now, the pre-prep and pre-explore, I put them together because the first one, the pre-prep, is just gathering. The pre-explore is where you as a team manager are going to decide what are the types of skills that you're observing in your team that you would like to highlight, that you'd like to give them a chance to either develop or perfect, or, just somehow reflect on where they are in the process of learning a specific skill. And some of those skills can be roles, understanding vocabulary, how to set personal goals for themselves. These are things that can be done before the instant challenge, kind of like a pre-teaching, okay, or a mini lesson before a main lesson, okay? The next thing, when you go into step 2, you're going to deal with the actual prep of the instant challenge. And the prep is now with the team sitting in front of you. They have their copies, you have your copy, and you're going to read through the instant challenge word for word. You're literally going to read exactly what's on the paper. And as you're reading that, no explanations, just reading it all the way through, your team is going to be following along. They can have pencils if you would like. They can make notes. They can circle things. Please encourage them to do that. Take into account that they will not be able to do that at the tournament, but we want them to learn the skills. So we want them to learn how to look and see things. So while they're practicing with you, I encourage them to really look at and mark and find things, because eventually they won't need the pencil anymore. Those things will jump out at them. Okay. So you've read it. They've read with you. You haven't added any explanations in. Now the students then have a chance to ask you questions. So anything that they might have highlighted or circled, they can ask you questions. Okay. And I know you're going to want to continue. You're going to want to clarify things that you wish they had asked you. Try not to do it then. Wait until they've finished to actually go back and raise these questions. Okay. So then we're going to move on to 3. So they've read it. They understand it. They have the materials in the center of the table. The team is gathered around the table, and you are going to press the timer so that they can begin. At this point in time, they can still have a copy of the challenge in front of them. That's absolutely fine. That way they can see what they're being scored on, and they can refer back to the challenge. They can no longer ask you any questions. During the practice session, no more questions may be asked or answered. Okay. Your job during practice is to observe. Take notes on the instant challenge in your roadmap. How are they behaving? What roles are each child taking on? What are you observing as skills that they may need to be, may need to still develop? All of those things will help you understand what questions to ask after they finish their instant challenge. Okay. So the timer goes off, and the first thing you're going to say is, please step away from the table. They need to put all the materials down. They need to stop at that moment. The first few times you do instant challenges, there's going to be a high frustration level because they will have brainstormed too long. They won't have finished in the time that was available for them. Okay, embrace that. Allow them to feel frustrated. It's absolutely fine. It is part of the process of allowing them to heal this fear of failure that they have. Okay, we have fear of failure everywhere in the world, and this is one of the ways where we can help them get past it. Let them feel the frustration, and then once it's passed, Then during the reflection, we can start talking about how did it feel to not reach the goal? What did you learn by not reaching the goal? Because when you realize that you learned something by failing and you point that out to them, it starts becoming something positive. Oh, so now I realize that we probably should have only brainstormed for 30 seconds. You learned that today. That's something new. You have learned something brand new in an 8-minute activity. So these are ways that we can help combat that fear of failure. Okay. And then, as I already went to the Post Explore, this is where the students get to reflect on their own process. So in the roadmap, you'll find that frequently there are questions for reflection, but you as the team manager can feel free to add more questions. All those notes that you took and observations that you made, you can feel free to ask questions now. So I noticed you want to try and not point fingers. So you might say, I noticed that you guys use certain roles today. What were the roles? Oh, here, actually, I'm just going to go to the next slide because no, I'm not going to. I changed my mind. You can say that you noticed that there was a task manager and that there was a time manager, but they didn't use some of the other roles, and ask them, why did they decide to do that? Instead of saying, oh, you forgot to do that, it's the idea of allowing them to figure out why did or didn't they do that? Because maybe they did it on purpose, maybe they didn't, but they should have the chance to figure that out for themselves through the questions that you're asking, okay? So those are some things. And then again, the team documents their answers on their Instant Challenge sheet, and that can stay in their document folder so that they have all of these Instant Challenges with all these things that they've learned that they get to keep for the season that they're going to be going through. So in the last 4 minutes, I'm just going to walk you through an Instant Challenge. This is a combined IC Instant Challenge called Crossword Puzzle. And as you can see, it has the challenge, it has the time, the procedure, the materials, and the scoring. Every Instant Challenge is set up in the same way, basically. Okay, so we have, if I am the team manager, I would literally walk through, I would make sure the teams are ready with their copy, and I would say, okay, I'm going to start reading now. Everybody follow along. This Instant Challenge is called Crossword Puzzle. The challenge, your task is to fill in a crossword puzzle with words that are related and then present a performance in which words you have chosen belong together. Time, you will have up to 4 minutes to use your imagination to complete your task of filling in the crossword puzzle and plan your performance, and up to 2 minutes to present your performance to the appraisers. Procedure, the writers of a new puzzle book for kids have come to your team for help. They need one more puzzle to finish the book, and on I go until I reach the very bottom, reading exactly what is on the page, okay? At that point, the team will be allowed to ask me questions. Now, as a team manager, I can already see where some of the issues might be, but I'm not going to bring those up to the team because we want them to learn by doing. This is very important, okay? So I know that those 4 minutes to fill in the crossword puzzle and plan the performance, most likely they're going to focus on filling the crossword puzzle and forget to plan the performance. It happens all the time. But after they do it and then you ask the question, I noticed that you guys didn't have time for your performance. Why do you think that was? And if they can't answer the questions, they don't know, bring the question down. We all know how to use Bloom's taxonomy. Make a more focused question to try and get them to understand what it was that was happening in them as a team. Because sometimes you as a team manager might observe and think that you know, but the team itself might have a different idea of what was going on and how they were interacting. Okay. And of course, you can see the scores there. The scores are very clear. And you want to always ask them questions about the scoring at the end. How many points do you think you earned in point A? 3 points for each word that is put into the crossword puzzle. Here, I'm just going to show you what the crossword puzzle looks like. So basically, they have to choose a theme. They have to come up with a word for each one. And they have to include the indicator for a cross and down. Okay, so actually, for this particular one, they're not even asking for a definition. They're simply asking you to put the words over here, and they all need to be somehow related together. Okay, so here I'm going to go back now to the Instant Challenge itself. And looking at the scoring again, points for creativity, points for the creativity of your performance, and points for how well your team works together. So getting them to understand that they had 30 points for performance and 20 points for how the words were related, they get more points for the creativity of the performance. So if there's a person who's in charge of scoring, their job is to interpret that and tell the team, no, don't focus on the words so much, focus on the performance being creative. So maybe 4 people need to do the performance and 2 people need to focus on how the words are related. Okay, so that's the idea of the roles and getting kids to explore the instant challenge and how they can work together. Okay, and one of the other things that I wanted to bring up very quickly about instant challenge. No, I forgot. It went out of my head as I was talking about the other things. Okay, so processing questions. I know it's time to go, so just so that you can see them, I've already talked about some of them, but your processing questions should be based on what you observed, and these are some questions that you could ask. What roles would you use or not use? Why? Would your budget of time have changed if different roles were employed? Which ones and how? Did you consider no box solutions, different languages, extending the boxes in the line? So for this particular challenge, did they consider using words where there was less, they didn't use all the boxes? Because it doesn't say that you can't do that. Did they consider using words in different language? Did they consider drawing an extra box if that's a word that was too long? Okay, these are things that they probably won't think about doing, but they're questions that you can ask them because it will help them to continue thinking without a box, that there are other things they can do. If the challenge doesn't say you can't, then you can. Okay, so these are just some of the ideas there. Okay, and the very last thing is documentation, which I've already been mentioning, but just so that you have an idea here, you have pictures. Allow the team or encourage the team to take pictures of themselves and their team as they work through the challenge. These pictures serve as a pictorial representation of the process they've gone through, and they'll, you know, how we love albums. It's a fabulous album to have at the end of the season that can go home on a USB, or it can just be a shared file that the kids can download at their houses. Another thing you can do is have them write things down. So writing them down on their challenge, keeping a notebook where at the end of each session, they can explore how they felt that day. Were they frustrated? Did they feel proud of something? Did they feel angry at somebody? And why? And explore that. Writing down aha moments when they realized that something really worked or something that they really loved. Going through failures. What was a time that I failed? But always write down that let's say they created a structure. Part of the structure wasn't actually working. Having them understand which part it was, writing that down on paper, making a new drawing of how they think they can fix it, and writing down next to it, what did they learn by that failure? What did they learn about science? What did they learn about themselves? What did they learn about their team by going through that particular failure? And understanding that modifications don't mean something didn't work, so let's throw the whole thing away and start from scratch. It's about looking at each moving part that goes into the challenge and seeing which part they think might not be working the way they'd like, and then how can they modify that particular component as opposed to scrapping their entire project. Okay, and of course they can also keep mementos, such as materials that they've been exploring, materials that they decided to use or didn't try to use. Any drawings and designs that they made on papers can be kept for a scrapbook. Team logos and names that they might have discussed, all of those things can be kept to create a powerful celebration during, because you celebrate during the season, but at the end, when they've finished, they can look back and see all of the things they've learned, the amazing process they've gone through, because you as a team manager has allowed them to have all of these informal learning experiences. So that's about it. Thank you very much. I apologize that I went over 4 minutes, but I'm very happy that you were all here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can look and see if we have any questions. No questions at all. Does anybody have any questions? Very good question, Harsh. So normally, no, a team manager cannot be an appraiser because the day of the tournament, you will be with your team the entire time. So you'll be accompanying them and making sure that the experience during the tournament is part of the whole DI experience. So no. Any other questions? You're very welcome. Harsh, are you registered in Texas to present in Texas? Okay, great. Okay, so anybody else have any questions? I see that Philippa and Joanna are still online. Philippa, Joanna, do you have any questions? Oh, you have 8-year-olds. Okay, have you chosen your challenge yet? No, not yet. Okay. So you're planning on doing a competitive challenge as opposed to the Rising Stars, right? Because they're already 8 years old? So you're doing Rising Stars? All second graders. Okay. So as a Rising Stars team, Harsh, they only have one challenge, so there isn't a challenge to choose from. They have only one, and then but I'm imagine that what you're referring to is that they're working on deciding how they're going to solve the challenge. Okay, great. That's fabulous. Okay, are there any other questions? Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. And if you find that you come up with any questions, please feel free. You can contact me anytime at director@diuk.org. Okay. Thanks very much and have a great day. Thanks, Joanna.